Welcome back to the Witchy Web We Weave. I'm Alex.
I'm Laura.
And this is WitchCraftin. This is going to be on and off series where we're going to be just crafting stuff. You can use them for altars, making your own runes,
a whole bunch of different things.
It's going to be all kinds of stuff just to kind of incorporate craftiness into your craft.
Because there's so many different things that you can do and ways to do it. So,
yep. So she's going to take the helm because I don't really know what we're doing.
So today we're going to be talking about salt dough. I really love salt dough because it is something that was very prevalent in my childhood. This is something that my great-grandmother used to do for me. And it's so easy and simple. When you're talking about salt dough itself, it's only used with 3 ingredients. And it's ingredients that are all around your house. Flour, salt, and a little bit of water. So one of the things that I really like about salt dough is the fact that it, like you had mentioned before, it doesn't use plastics, it doesn't use unnatural or man-made materials other than the fact that the flour has been milled. It's not in its original state, but it's still very tied to the earth, I feel like. Sorry. I had to put my ring on my necklace so that my lady didn't get mixed up in all the dough. She didn't really want to come off, but she'll be safe there. So
dough. Making it.
Yes. One of the things that, you know what, I'm just going to go ahead and start making it. So if y'all want to follow along at home, the way that you make just a decent sized little batch of salt dough is you take 1 cup of all-purpose flour.
Doesn't have to be anything fancy.
Nothing fancy. 1 cup of just regular salt. Again,
I was gonna ask, did it matter the texture of the salt? Because some folks have like the crystals and stuff.
Finer ground is better, just because you want it to really get incorporated with the flour. That's what's going to give it a better texture, which is going to make it easier to work with. If you use bigger hunks of salt, it's more likely to crack. So, like I said, 1 cup all-purpose flour, 1 cup of well-ground salt, and then a ½ cup of water. And that is your ratio for however much you want to make. Because this will normally make about... And if you're going to be making this, please, if you got it, wear apron or something. Because it can't get messy. I mean, you're working with
unless
flour.
You're into the mess, you know.
Unless you're into the mess. And then this is really great for kiddos. So if y'all have any little witchlings, this is a perfect craft to do with your little witchlings.
Especially y'all looking for like a family activity to do to incorporate your lifestyles. It's a little harder, I think, for pagan witch families to kind of do stuff because it's not, unless you're in a really good community, which those do exist. But you know, it's not like your normal Sunday church group where they do like events and stuff typically, so. Yeah,
and like I said, this is something that my great-grandmother used to do with me. She used to make salt dough for me and then just let me play with it. And honestly, the last time that I had made salt dough, I was like I was 5 or 6 years old. So it has been a minute since I've played with salt dough, and actually as I'm working with this, I'm getting lots of waves of nostalgia. This is actually...
the nostalgia's hitting.
But I remember when I was a little kid, I would make little salt dough roses and, you know, all that mess. So really, sorry about the clacking. It gets a little more difficult as this stuff is being formed. But really, you just keep working it until you get a consistency that you like. Now, salt dough can be a little bit crumbly when you're first working with it. So that if you need to...
more water, or you don't want it to like liquefy too much.
You don't want it to get too dry. If it gets too dry, add a little bit of water. If it is kind of crumbly, sometimes add a little bit of extra flour to it, and then just keep adding a little bit of water until it gets to a nice consistency, but try not to overwater it. Once you overwater it, you got to add more salt and more flour in order to get things where they need to be. I'm just going to grab a little handful of flour over here.
And then, yeah, the proportions might not work as well if you're just kind of eyeballing it over and over and over again.
Sorry about the clacking. Thank you.
I'll just hold it.
My lovely assistant, ladies and gentlemen. And witchlings of all ages and sizes. So really, as I'm working it, I've added a little bit of flour. You can see it's getting a little bit more crumbly, so that means just a tad.
Just a little
slick of water.
There?
Yeah, just a little splash.
Splish splash, taking a bath.
Pretty much. Set that over there. My lovely assistant is slacking.
Oh, thanks. But yeah, so we are going to be making a couple different things today. One of the things she brought up earlier was that we're going to do different batches just to show you guys what can happen. Because typically you want this to air dry or dry outside. Is that a thing you can do?
Yes, you can set it outside to dry. Normally,
will animals go after it though?
I mean, if you have cats and dogs, maybe.
Yeah, something might run away with it. So if you have critters outside, maybe be wary. But typically, like she had said, you want it to sit out in the air for a couple days just so it dries naturally, kind of like an air dry clay.
Yeah,
that's worked with that stuff.
Pretty much. That's the best way. Normally, it takes about 2 to 3 days for this to completely and utterly dry all the way through. However, it can be ready for pickup in like a day or so. However, if you need it to dry a little bit faster, you can heat it and cook it in the oven. But typically, whenever you do try to cook it in the oven, it tends to gain some discoloration. And if you do it too much, it can either singe or burn just a little bit, or it can...
Don't at me.
I guess so. Or it can...
crack.
It can crack, yes.
So we are going to do small batches just to show you guys in case our batches do crack or anything, just so we can show you what's going on. And that'll just be small tiddly bits of whatever, but we are going to make actual crafts today with this.
Which I think we're ready to get started.
Oh, cool.
Because I finally got it at a texture I really like. It's got a little bit of...
So is it dough or is it Play-Doh? Oh, it's like grainy. I did not expect it to be...
It's just a little bit grainy. That's the salt.
Mm-hmm.
The salt gives it a little bit of texture, but that's one of the reasons why I really like salt dough.
This would also, even if y'all don't make witchy stuff with it, this would also be good for sensory stuff.
Mm-hmm. It's very good for people that are very big into tactile.
Mm-hmm.
Tactile working. Yep.
Split it.
But literally, you just take it and there you go. There's your hunk. Here, I'll set that aside. We'll do it over here.
Somewhere out of the way.
Somewhere out of the way.
So, it rolled up.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna make some I'm gonna make 2 somethings for our baking batches because we're gonna do one lower temp, longer time, one higher temp, quicker time. We'll tell y'all what that is once we get to that part. But then for the main chunk, we do have stuff we are wanting to actually craft today, and we will either insert pics when we finish it when it's all dry because we're probably gonna air dry that stuff, or we will film another little chunk at the end and just kind of show it off.
One of the really nice things about salt dough is as you're working with it, it heats up and it becomes a very comfortable. It almost it starts taking in your energy. It's one of the reasons why I really like salt dough, and it's also the fact that because there's salt in it, it can take on the properties of salt. So this is really good for if you are making statues. I've also seen people make little candle holders or little plates or cups to put things in.
I was gonna amulets, runes, anything that you could. I don't know how fragile this stuff is, if I'm gonna be honest. But so I don't know about pockets, but I was gonna say like if you wanted to wear something like on a necklace or. I know I couldn't put it on my keys because I beat my keys up, but for some reason I've seen people put polymer clay on their keys.
Yeah.
So if you're delicate enough with your keys, you can definitely make like a little charm keychain type deal. Mm-hmm. Or what I was also going to just suggest as I remembered it was a lot of people, especially in other countries actually, hang stuff from the mirror in their car.
Oh.
Like I've seen, especially in Mexico, a lot of people will hang like the Virgin Mary or crosses, rosaries, stuff from there, you know, or like a little flag, like especially in Mexico, I've seen a lot of banderas mexicanas, you know, just pride kind of going.
Another thing with salt dough is it does really good for imprinting for the most part. Like if you wanted to have a little stamp or something, or you want to put a little image on it, it actually works pretty well. Better than what you would expect salt dough to do. The only thing is with salt dough is sometimes as you're working with it, it will really dry out your hands. Because I mean, you are working with salt. It is going to pull that moisture out of your hands as you're working with it. So just something to keep in mind. You may want to lotion up afterwards.
Or if you kind of have it coming, like if it's going to be like a planned activity, you might want to like lotion up a few hours before. And then after again, especially if any of y'all have any dry skin.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's so big.
Sorry.
If this doesn't burn, I'm thinking of adding it to my bag.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I wanted it to be small enough to not, like that's too big.
One of also the good things if you want to incorporate your little witchlings into making things, this is a really good opportunity to experiment with different objects around your house for making different impressions, making different shapes. Like for instance, I'm using this as a rolling pin. We may have a rolling pin around here somewhere, but where's the fun in that?
Probably.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised.
But yeah, so... And then we have toothpicks, so you can carve into this, draw into this. You had mentioned that we can even dye this with natural things.
Yes, you can. If you need to, you can use food coloring. However, you can also use natural colorant if you have it. One of the most popular ones that I know of is beet juice. It will turn it a magnificent
pinky color.
Yeah, dark pink.
Magenta.
If you go really light on it, sometimes you can get a softer pink, or even a brain work. I want to say like a more fuchsia color.
Yeah, and once it's dry, if y'all didn't want to do like the au naturel, you can always slap some paint on there too. So.
Do keep in mind if you are thinking about baking this, take the size of what you're making into account. Because if it's a smaller item, it is going to be easier to overbake it, and
it'll probably shrink some too. Like if you make it like.
Honestly, it's been so long, I don't remember if baking it in the oven will shrink it any.
So something to keep in mind, and something we'll talk about here in another second when we do throw all this in the oven. But yeah.
I have actually also seen a few people add a couple of different herbs to salt dough if they're using it for making a specific thing. Because I have seen people make dolls or puppets out of this, or people-esque shapes if they're trying to make it represent someone. If that is the case, salt dough is really easy to incorporate other things into the dough itself. So you can add tag locks if you need to, you know. I just wouldn't recommend that it would be a liquid type. I think it works better with if you're incorporating like skin or hair or things like that.
You might want to be careful on the hair though if you're
baking it. Be careful about adding the skin and hair. Also, if you're gonna add like herbs or something to the mixture, like I've seen people add rosemary or rosebuds, things like that, like crushed up stuff. I would recommend letting that dry rather than cook it in the oven, just for safety's sake. You want to take over talking for a second?
It is a little sticky because I had asked her earlier if this was going to stick to the plates. So if you're trying to do something, I wouldn't necessarily recommend this for intricate stuff unless you've got like a really good hand with that. Just because it'll more than likely stick to whatever you're working on, and when you go to lift it, unless you're baking it, make it on your baking tray, and then you'll probably avoid that mess. But other than that, you're probably going to want to make it just something that you can either scoop up with like a spatula, so nothing with like really delicate edges or anything. But yeah, I actually have pepper out here because I wanted to add pepper to something I made here in a second, so we'll see how that goes. But yeah.
Sure.
We'll be back.
So once you're done making your little items, I always suggest that you give it proper time for things to dry. Case in point, we went ahead and we made a couple of different things.
Yeah, off camera because it was taking a long time.
It took a while.
It's a good afternoon project because you're going to be here for a good minute.
Yeah, but some of our things, we moved them while they were mid-drying, and
they cracked.
There was a little bit of cracking that happened. So if you're going to let them dry, you need to give them full couple of days to dry out. Otherwise, if you attempt to move them, there could be cracking if it's dry on the outside but still moist on the inside.
Or on the bottom, which is what happened.
Or on the bottom. But, you know, just to
show you a couple things we made.
And we'll insert some little photos at the end probably to give you a better view.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that was sliding around. So I made a couple little things here, and then this is something we talked about in our
pendulum video. So if you're interested more about it, go and check that out. At the very end of the pendulum video, we show Alex using her chakra generator in order to read people's auras as a kind of a check-in type thing. So this is our attempts at a DIY for something that you can do at home just using what you have on hand, especially if you have tumbled stones about. Because we each went to our little rock shop and got the 7 stones, one for each of the 7 main chakras.
Oh God, you dropped the plate. I just cut out of the corner of my eye. I was like...
No, we're good.
And then we have the quartz in the middle.
As, you know, just a general generator and keep the energy going. But you can see some of the things that I've made here, and because they're still wet and they're still drying, they're pretty much able to mostly stick to the plate as is. Yeah,
this one's for me is still stuck on there because that one I did not want to move.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. But you can see right there, this is the chakra generator that we referenced in the pendulum video. So if you're interested, go and check that out. I think it's really neat.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, that about wraps it up. We will attempt to bake some of this just to show you guys how that might end up. But yeah, like we had said, we both, you didn't make a candle thing. You had made one, but
it didn't work out so well.
Yeah, I made this little tiny one just for like little, what are they called? Chime candles?
Oh yeah.
Or charm candles. They're like the little itty bitty birthday, just bigger than birthday size. You could probably put a birthday candle in there though.
Probably, yeah.
So yeah, you can make just about anything as far as dough goes, obviously. Couple little pointers that I noticed. It does. You have to have a really delicate hand if you want to do anything delicate with it. Case in point, this. Well, that doesn't even show up. Carving is not the best. But that took a good minute, and it's very scratchy because you have to. It's dough, so it's got move. It doesn't really give, take, kind of like polymer clay might. Cracking. Be wary of that, obviously. It's sort of in between Play-Doh and dough, so you can get some height to it, but it will also be droopy if you're not really watching it.
Yeah, you can see I made a little. She called it a bear, but it's supposed to be.
It looks more wolfy now.
I never claimed to be very good at making statuary, okay?
Yeah. So you can do statuary that's more three-dimensional, but just keep in mind it's not quite polymer clay. Well, it will stay stiff till you bake it.
Mm-hmm.
You want it to kind of be that consistency when you're making cookies, where it's just hardening, and then kind of keep it up as it does that process. But other than that,
yeah,
it's dough.
And keep in mind, it is dough, so the longer you work with it, the more it's going to be drying out as it goes. If it gets a little, you know, if you've been working with it for a little while and it's really starting to kind of harden, try to just kind of
moisten your hands. That's what I do.
Moisten your hands just a little.
Or it'll get sticky.
Yeah, like almost like rinse your hands and then mostly dry them out to where your hands are only kind of damp. And then go and work it, and then just keep working it, and it'll loosen back up a little bit, and you can keep working with it. Because I ended up having to do that twice, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And then your hands are going to really dry out as you're working with it because it's salt dough, so salt dough dries you out. Never fear, just get up, rinse your hands, just kind of do this in the sink, and then just dry them out, and they're good as new.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my hands didn't stay dry or anything.
No.
So I would only really be careful if you have really dry hands.
Mm-hmm.
with the whole lotion thing we mentioned earlier. But other than that, my hands turned out just fine, honestly. No dry patches.
But we hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope that you got some neat ideas of what to do, and I hope you go and check out that
Pendulum video.
The pendulum video with the chakra reader.
Yep. All right. See y'all on the next one.
All right. Bye.